All right, it's showtime. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Coin Republic podcast. My name is Shurab Acharya. Artificial intelligence and blockchain go hand in hand. It's something that defines Web3 of some sort. Emerging tech has so many umbrella terms, but one of the industries that it affects quite extensively is the gaming industry, esports. And we've had the honor to host a lot of people from that industry as well, talking about tokenized assets, gaming guilds, and all sorts of things. In today's episode, we're going to have an interesting case study, an interesting company. They're called AI Arena. They mash human interactions and artificial intelligence together in the esports industry. How do they work? How do they operate? What's their USP? We're going to take a deep dive into it today, so it's going to be a valuable one. I am joined by the CEO and the COO of the company. I would like to bring them on the screen now. Welcome to the screen, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Fantastic. So I think three is a crowd. We are joined by both the CEO and the COO. Let's start with the team itself. But before that, right, before that, I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. What are you guys all about? How would you define AI Arena for the people who don't know you guys?
Sure, Brandon, do you want me to take that
Yeah,
or
go for it, man.
okay, I can go for it. All right.
Tag
Sure. I'll
team.
start and
Tag team.
then I'm sure
Yeah.
Brandon can add to my description. So AI Arena is a we think it's a category defining game where we're actually integrating AI into the core of a player's experience. Visually, it looks something similar to a platform fighting game. So the most popular one that people may be aware of is something like Super Smash Bros. However, the gameplay experience is fundamentally different than the traditional platform fighter. In AI Arena, the objective of the game is actually for a human player to train their AI character. And in doing so, their AI actually learns how to play the game like the human trainer. And this is a very interesting kind of progression loop and experience, one where over time the player and the AI really forges very strong emotional bond with each other because it's kind of like looking at a reflection of yourself, kind of performing on screen all of the skills that you were able to teach it over time. And the fun really begins when you start to enter your AI into what we call the arena, which is a global kind of ranked leaderboard kind of battle setting. And you're able to use your AI to compete against other people's AIs that they've trained. So, Saurav, if you train an AI, Brandon trains an AI, and I train an AI, we all go into the battle arena and basically duke it out to see whose AI is the best. So that's the premise of the
Sure.
project. I'm happy to obviously add more color as we go along in this conversation.
Sure. Brandon, how do you define it?
I think Wei did a great job defining defining what we're doing at AI Arena.
Fantastic. Let's go with the kind of people you're adopting over here. Now, I usually get two kinds of people talking to me about esports and Web3, right? They're either against tokenization. They say, why do we need decentralization on esports? We're happy playing the good old days, right? The good old games. And they're the people who think that NFTs and artificial intelligence, they're a huge deal. They could really transform the industry. What kind of people are you onboarding on your, community?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start here. So at a high level, we are onboarding players, right? Gamers. So whether they are Web3 gamers or traditional gamers, we are kind of implementing user acquisition strategies to go after both markets. The type of people that really gravitate towards our game, I mean, there's a natural affinity, obviously, in the fighting game community, right? The core premise of the game is a PvP fighter. So one of the early starting points is to really target the fighting game community, whether it's Smash players, whether it's Brawlhalla players, etc. But beyond that, I think this type of game loop also could capture the interest of different types of gamer archetypes. So if you think about really super competitive players, people that really enjoy being on a leaderboard, and their whole thing is to play games because of the spirit of competition. I think this game is naturally designed to really lift out the competitive aspects. Other types of archetypes include, modders, people who like to tinker, make adjustments to core games. And if you think about what an AI is, we give you basically this blank canvas of a learning apparatus, and you can basically mold it into behaving any way that you want. Um, and then
Mhm.
and then over time, I think people who like strategy games, people who perhaps like sports kind of manager games, simulation games. There's a whole variety of different types of player archetypes that we can go after, and I think that speaks to the kind of interesting new spin that we're putting on gaming that's uniquely enabled by the technology that we built over time at the company. And we think we're kind of bringing in a brand new gaming category that's powered by AI. So we're excited about that.
Sure. From what I can understand over here, you have a process called imitation learning. It has three steps. AI learns from the person, then AI captures their skills, then it competes for you. It represents you on the game. How is it like deep? Is it a deep learning technique like machine learning, or how does it work? Could you shed some light into it?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say our initial model is the thing that's most similar to conventional deep learning, right? Like deep learning is just an artificial neural network with a lot of layers, right? The more layers you add, the more like deep the neural network becomes. So usually when people refer to deep learning, they're referring to some artificial neural network that's trained through backpropagation. Um, our core model is that. Of course, we have tweaks to it in terms of the exact architecture, how it learns, and all that stuff to make it work in the specific game context. But yeah, that was our initial model, or call it original model. We are starting to branch out into different types of models. The second one we introduced has nothing to do with deep learning. It's more rooted in like Bayesian statistics. Our third one is kind of like a combination of the two with some other stuff mixed into. Um, the idea basically with like the current one we're working on is that we want it to be like an easy user experience, but still have the really high like skill ceiling. So we had to do different things with the models because, for example, an artificial neural network, we found a lot of users they couldn't wrap their heads around the concept of interpolation between features. And so essentially what we had to do is make some tweaks to make it easier for kind of like newcomers to kind of play. But yeah, our initial model did use deep learning. Some of our subsequent ones do not or use some aspect of deep learning.
Fantastic. In your description on your website, you have mentioned an interesting point about uh, gaming bots and how you guys are protecting games against gaming bots, cheat resistant infrastructure. Could you expand on that a little bit? How could AI help get rid of gaming bots?
Um, I'll just say we're not explicitly getting rid of gaming bots. Our infrastructure is set up in a way to be resistant against it, but this will not work for all games. It only works for our games because it's AIs competing against each other and everything happens on the server side, right? So there is no client server interaction when we're running sort of ranked battle. Because it's two AIs competing against each other, right? So we don't need to ever basically call or like ping the client to send inputs to the backend, right? Everything happens within our server, then gets sent to the client to be rendered. In that case, it's impossible for anyone to cheat, right? It's impossible for people to rage quit, all this stuff. It's impossible for people to use bots because everything happens on our server. That doesn't work for all other games. Games that require human input, as soon as you require someone to like input anything that gets sent back to a server from the client, there is room to cheat there, basically. So I just wanted to make the distinction. We're not like offering a service to prevent like bots from all games. It's just from our game, it's resistant to this type of thing.
So it's a
Yeah.
byproduct of the thing. I have an interesting question, right? Like Midjourney is a Discord server
Mm.
based service, right? Are you guys exclusively Discord based as well? How do you guys differ from something like Midjourney, ChatGPT? What is your USP?
Um, in terms,
Yeah,
I can go for a way.
yeah. Maybe I'll take care of that. Well, fundamentally, it's different because we're building a game, right? So, I think Midjourney and ChatGPT, they're kind of large language model engines that help people basically accelerate the response of a particular task, right? So, like ChatGPT is a chatbot, Midjourney is an image generation engine. We are a game. Now, the user experience on like a ChatGPT, I think most people are familiar with that nowadays. You have text input, it goes through the model, and then the model spits out some output that's probably aligned with the outcome that you're seeking. In AI arena, there is similarly an input kind of the model kind of works kind of mechanic, and then there's an output, but it's a gamified loop. It's a game, right? So the user experience is fundamentally rooted in a game progression system. And what that looks like is the input is not text. The input is actually actions. And what those actions are, you have to control and show those actions to your AI. So the starting point is you actually, it feels like you're playing something like Smash Bros. And you're just clicking buttons because you're deliberately showing your AI, hey, I want you to punch in this situation. I want you to kick in this situation. I want you to learn how to recover in this situation. So you're basically entering, quote unquote, the keystrokes, and your AI is recording all of your actions. That's the input that gets piped into this AI model. And then not only are you showing it what to do, you can also basically modulate how it learns, right? Which is what we call the configuration steps, where you can say, well, I showed you how to punch. I showed you in this situation, you click the punch button. However, I want you to learn punching in these types of situations, in this context, in this way. And then the combination of these two steps allows your AI to learn a new way of behaving. In machine learning terms, that's the updating of its policy. And then thereafter, the last step is called inspection. What we actually give you is this basically, it's almost like an X, think about it like an X-ray glasses. You can see into the brain of your AI and start to understand how it's currently making decisions. So it allows you to basically understand what it has learned, where its weaknesses are, like areas where it still hasn't really learned a set of behaviors, and then you can use that information to basically go back into the beginning of that loop and kind of fix and tweak those weakness areas to like sequentially like round out its behavior, right? So it's almost like how a human learns a new skill as well. If you're learning a sport, you start with the fundamentals, but over time you start to add layers and layers of other techniques. And as you're doing this, you start to build a very well-rounded ability to actually play the game or play the sport. So very similar in terms of process there. And this overall experience is rooted in a game, not like a text-based prompting engine.
Again, if I could take you back on the question a little bit, Midjourney is exclusively Discord
Mm-hmm.
based. I'm just a bit confused. Are you guys
No,
exclusively Discord
no, it's a
based?
game.
Is it so you have a separate
It's
server?
a game that runs in the browser. So you basically log into a website, and you can
Okay,
access it through some kind of login credential, like a Gmail account or a Discord account, and then you play the game in the browser. But it's a
okay,
game. It's not something that runs inside of Discord.
okay. Got you now. Uh, you have after you train the AI, that is uploaded, that the skill set is uploaded, the AI then represents the human, and then it has a your service has a competitive space, a particular ranking system that is based on something called you call an elo
Mhm.
score, right? If you could expand on that a little bit, what is an elo score? How do you guys determine who's gonna rank number one versus number 10, number 8? How do you rank them?
Sure.
Sure. I mean, Elo score is like a well-documented like scoring system. It's been used in chess for a very long time. Essentially, um, the way it works is like like if someone wins, their elo score will go up. If they lose, their elo score will go down. And the proportion which it goes up and down is dependent on the type of opponent they face. So if they face someone really hard, like much higher elo than them, and they beat them, then their elo is going to go up more than if they face someone closer to their skill level, right? The idea is like if you beat someone that's really better than you, like you deserve to move up the ranks more because your skill, your ranking is not like representative. You should in fact be up here, right? And so that's the idea. It's this iterative thing that over time should land you on where your skill set is. And so in order for someone to place number one, they need to have the highest elo out of everyone in the world, essentially, right? Which means that they have to just kind of keep beating people, and once they kind of beat the person at the top, they can like inch their elo up over here. And then it's only when someone like the second person, for example, like keeps beating them, then their elo could become higher. And so the ranking is 100% a function of basically like how good they are, right? So how many matches they win and against who they win these matches.
Fair enough. Maybe if you want to add something on that,
No, I
or
think
is it good to go?
mechanically, like Brandon covered it. I mean, conceptually, the way to think about it is like in traditional video games, there's usually a progression system, right? Like let's just take, I don't know, Pokemon for a very simple example. In Pokemon, you can train your Pokemon up from level 1 to like level 99. At least the last time I played the game. I don't know, it may be different now. But that scale of progression is predetermined by someone, right? That was predetermined by
Mhm.
a developer. The developer said, here's 1 to 99, and on this scale, at each rung of that scale, I predetermined this is what your character's abilities are. With our system, because you're using AIs, like it's useful to think about AIs a bit more like humans, right? Like Sarav, I would never say that you are currently level 999 and I'm level 1250. Like it just doesn't make any sense, right? Who gets to determine what those numbers mean, right? However, Elo gives you an ability to have this relative calibration of very kind of objectively, is someone better than someone else at a particular skill, right? So the way that it works is basically what Brandon has described, but it allows us to discover, relatively speaking, is someone better than me? How much are they better than me? And then where do I rank globally in the entire pool of competitors without having some arbitrary third party come in and say, you are 99, you're 87, you're 65, right? You just allow the market to basically reveal that score for you through competition.
Cool. If I may quickly ask, what's your score?
Oh, just not pretty. Not pretty in the game. I'm certainly not a power player.
No, if you were in the top 10 though, I would probably say you guys are rigged. But
Yeah.
thank you. Uh, Now, would you have? Let's talk about money, right? In tokenized gaming space, Axie Infinity were once the king. Then came many gaming guilds, and that's how it had its own controversy in itself. But monetization is definitely one of the things that is to be talked about in esports, right? Now, you have an interesting point on infinite matchmaking liquidity because it's infinite. AI could represent you, goes on, and there are infinite opportunities that are getting tokenized. And how do you see it? How do you explain it a little bit?
Okay, so maybe I'll separate that question into two pieces. One is specifically on the infinite matchmaking liquidity, what that means, and then the second one is more about monetization. But just touching on the first one, you correctly highlighted with an AI character being the one that actually does the competing in the game. They don't have any downtime, right? Humans have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to like. There's only X amount of time in a day that you can actually do things. With an AI, they're 24/7 available,
Exactly.
right? So what that means is not only are they always available to compete against another AI, they are also available in parallel to be able to compete across multiple different competitions at the exact same time. There is no limitations there because it's at the end of the day, it's a piece of software, right? And it lives digitally in this like ephemeral digital world. So infinite matchmaking liquidity means just think about availability. And what the consequence of that is very interesting, because when you look at traditional games where it is dependent on the human controlling the action, you run into these capacity constraints of like humans being available to actually compete together. So even the largest games out there, the most successful esports franchises out there, you still have issues of what's called matchmaking liquidity, i.e., there's not enough people online at the same time in the same region to actually have a competition. So this
Mm.
prevents a lot of competitive games from scaling because of this like concurrency issue. We kind of break through that barrier because ultimately it's the AIs that are fighting, and this actually allows us to not only um, we can basically have a very good competitive experience despite having relatively small player base, whereas you can't really do that with most other games where the human is like the focal point of the player. So that's on the infinite matchmaking liquidity side. As it relates to monetization, what's interesting about infinite matchmaking liquidity is that you can now monetize again in a theoretically higher velocity or higher volume than traditional games. So the underlying premise is that if there is, you can make the assumption that if there is a, let's say, one battle taking place at a moment in time, that one vector of like one person versus another person, so long as that exists, there may present to be a monetization opportunity, right? Now, if you think about that as liquidity, the more liquidity you have, i.e., the more concurrency that you can have different people competing at the same time, your monetization potential scales as a function of how many of those nodes can interact at any moment in time, right? So this is how matchmaking liquidity relates to monetization, and in our game, it expands the potential of monetization because of this unlocking capacity using AI. I didn't go into the depth of like how do we monetize, but this is how the two ideas are kind of related.
A not so journalistic question, though. You know those memes that Sam Altman has a blue bag to shut down ChatGPT just in case. What do you have if something goes scary? If the AI characters comes to life or something like that?
Yeah, that's a funny well, it is a funny question, but I would say it's not possible in our case. So, um, our models are confined, right? So we define what's called the action space, right? So it can only take these actions, which is just actions in our game, right? You can't do anything outside of that. So it's not one of those models, something like a large language model, which can write and execute code to change itself. So there's certainly no concern on our part of any of these models going rogue.
Right. But you specifically chose Web3, which is the reason why we are doing this interview, because we exclusively interview people from Web3. What's the edge do you get as a Web3 company? And also on that note, I would like you to give a couple of tips for the budding Web3 entrepreneurs out there who oughta look up to you for their fundraising, for their ventures. Couple of tips from them as
I
well.
would say, feel free to add to this way, but I would say in terms of like what edge we have, it's doing something different than even anything in Web 2. I think that's very important. I think we see a lot of people basically taking what's in Web 2 and just slapping a token on it, right? And saying, this is Web 3, I'm innovating. Reality is that's not innovation. What we're doing is something that you can't find either in Web 2 or Web 3. We're doing something completely new. It happens to work a lot better in Web 3, which is why we're doing it in Web 3. But I think that's the biggest thing is to actually have an edge, you have to do something that people can't find anywhere, not just people can't find it in Web3. You know what I mean? Wei, feel free to add to this.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it. I think the only thing I would add is the Web3 aspect of our project um, is the fact that it is built in Web3 uniquely makes it a better product. And that's important as well. So I think
Mm.
what Brandon was describing is exactly the same concept where, just because you have something, you slap a token on it, it's effectively the same thing. right? And then you just
Hmm.
unlock like a liquidity aspect to that particular token or asset or what have you. In our case, the way that we employ Web3 in our game is we use it as a kind of this financial infrastructure layer to power the competitive league of the game. And why is it
Hmm.
useful to power competitively? Is because competitive players, i.e., esports players, they play a game for different intentions than a regular player, right? They don't go in to try to
Hmm.
casually enjoy the game. No, they're going in to kill their competitors, right? And in doing so,
Hmm.
they want to earn value in return because they, train themselves to be at such a highly operating level. They want to be rewarded for that. So Web3 allows us to basically create a league that is global in scale, and it allows us to
Hmm.
distribute value and rewards in a very efficient way, right? Using blockchain, using tokens, using NFTs. Now, the counterfactual would be, well, couldn't you do this in Web 2? Couldn't you do this in traditional, using traditional infrastructure? And the answer is, well, technically feasible, practically is cost prohibitive, if not impossible, right? Because can you imagine? Can you imagine running a competition where you have people from India, Africa, South America, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, North America, and then trying to administer some kind of economic incentive and reward program concurrently across that entire target audience is almost impossible.
Yeah, I have a cross question, quick one. Should a Red Dead Redemption or Rockstar Games, San Andreas, or any other or these big names, centralized games, adopt Web3? How do you see it? Would they adopt it eventually in like a decade or so? How do you see that?
Well, I think my personal view is there's so many different ways of creatively using Web3 primitives to enhance player experiences in gaming. And we take one particular view in terms of how we want to do that, which is more focused on the competitive side and really re-engineering and reimagining how esports can work. Other studios do it in different ways. I don't know if there's a right or wrong. It's just experimentation at a broad scale. When it comes to the large game studios right now, I can assure you that they are all experimenting or at the very least monitoring what's happening in the Web3 space. They may not be the first
Yeah.
movers to take action because for an established studio, that's probably a lot of risk that they want to manage. But rest assured, they're digging around, they're learning through other projects, either succeeding or failing, and they're probably keeping a very close eye on things that are getting uptake, and they can be very quick, like second movers in the space, right? As soon as something starts to generate traction and it's a proven model and it starts to de-risk the concept, I would expect the large studios would basically come in and start replicating that and basically implementing that on a current franchise that they have or some franchise that they probably have been developing for a very long time. And they're just waiting for a window to basically integrate that into Web3. That's my personal view. So,
So,
yeah.
okay. I mean, I've seen your parent company, Arena X Labs. You guys raised $5 million back in 2021. That's a lot of money. So again, coming back to the question for the budding entrepreneurs, how do you raise $5 million? Okay, I'm taking notes now.
um, yeah, I think, well, first of all, you'd have to have a good, like an interesting idea that's fundamentally solving a problem or making something better. So you have to have a good product. Um, and then I think, you need to be able to tell a story and really convey a vision of a world that is basically a better place to live in, irrespective of like what type of problem you're trying to solve. You're trying to move the goalpost forward. Um, and then to kind of execute that vision, it's a lot of like sweat equity, right? Like you kind of have to go in there and just build. So Brandon spent like you said, like 8 months building a prototype, and we took that to demonstrate that, hey, it's not just like this pie in the sky idea that sounds really interesting. Is here's a working model of it, right? and you can see
mm,
visually that it's working. Now it's not perfect, but now I actually have something tangible to marry up with the vision that I'm trying to convey to you, right? So that combination, I think, would be
mm,
very powerful. And then the rest of it is,
mm.
networks really important, right? Knowing the right people, getting the right intros so you can get in front of, credible investors. That's kind of a skill. And maybe if you don't have the skill, bring on someone that does onto the team, because that will unlock value for you. And then when it comes down to it, you gotta have one hell of a pitch so that you can convince people to really kind of back your vision, and really demonstrate that you
Mm.
can execute. um, that's probably one of the things that investors look for the most, because they hear a lot of great ideas, but behind all of that, they're really trying to understand you as a person. What's your track record? Can you actually take this idea and implement it and execute it to build something big that can really deliver value?
There are so many memes out there on LinkedIn for that goes against AI venture capitalists. It seems that they just invest in AI with just the word uttered, right? Is it that easy if you just utter AI 3 times in front of VC, you get money?
Um,
How
I
hard
mean,
was
well,
it?
I'll say when we raised money, it was before this whole AI like wave, so it was quite a different landscape. This was before ChatGPT and all that stuff and Midjourney. Um, Now it's I don't know actually. I think there was an initial like period of time in which you just said AI and VCs were like, oh, like I they felt like they missed the boat, and so they're like just invested in anything with AI. Um, I don't know if that's still the case because I think some of them are like, okay, we went a bit too far on this. But yeah, I think there is probably some truth to that because um I think a lot I'm gonna get myself in trouble here, but I think let's put it this way. I don't think there's as deep of AI expertise in a lot of these VCs, and so they don't necessarily need to understand the tech. And so there could be some people that are really good at selling something that doesn't have too much substance behind it, and VCs will buy into that. Not all VCs, of course. There's some that are very deep tech, but there is certainly a subset of VCs that will buy into that.
Yeah, I think we were also in a
Fair
hype
enough.
cycle, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a moment in time. I don't think this would be like a persistent thing where you just slap AI and people
So
will give you money. I think we were in a very, very big hype cycle just a few months ago.
So would you say you guys exclusively are on blue ocean, or is it commoditized? Is it getting commodification
Oh,
slowly?
what we're building is blue ocean, and that ocean is vast, which
Oh,
is what's challenging because we have to navigate it. But I think there are pockets of AI, especially like generative models, large language models, like those pockets are pretty saturated right now, just because that's where the hype was.
so who do you define? Who do you define as your competitors? Do you have any
Um,
competitors?
I think on
Like,
the gaming side, it's hard. It's hard to
yeah,
say like any game is a direct competitor. But having said that, all games compete against each other.
yeah,
And that, while that may sound like a
Wow.
throwaway comment, it's not. It's, gaming as well as any most entertainment media types of businesses, you're ultimately competing for people's attention, and you're really just competing for people's time. So it's super competitive, even if we don't have another game exactly the same as ours out there. And I think ironically, if there was, it actually probably make marketing a lot easier
yes.
because then you can kind of like play off of that competitive aspect, and you kind of create more and more resonance with the concept and the idea. But we are very much
Mm,
in that blue ocean by ourselves. It's exciting, and we think there's a massive market, but at the same time, it comes with its own challenges, because when you're trying to create something new, no one understands it to start, right? So you need to really kind of hold their hand, educate them, bring them in, allow them to experience it, and then through that experience is when they become believers and they become evangelical about it, and then they can start to spread it. But it's a slow moving thing. It's not like AI arena is
mm,
not going to succeed based on this like supernova explosion of like interest necessarily. At least I don't think so. I won't rule it out. but it's a slow build that really starts to accelerate on the back end. That's how we see it. So yeah.
Mhm. I guess the best way to end this podcast to talk about NFTs. Let's talk about your NFT collection. Is it available on OpenSea yet? What's it? What is it called? And how? What's the floor price like? How could people
Yeah,
avail of your NFTs?
sure. Yeah, we have a active and trading NFT collection. It's called AI Arena Mint Passes. The way to think about it is these NFTs are, think about it like a league pass. So possessing one of these NFTs gives you access to the premier level of competition for AI Arena in the future. So think about it as like a professional league. These NFTs are scarce. So right now there's about 350 of them on the market. We will continue to release them until about 500. And at around that 500 level is when we intend to launch the game on mainnet for the competitive players. So initially, there will be about 500 NFTs available. And then subsequent to that, there is no cap on the supply, but the way that the supply will grow very, very slowly. Because the NFTs, the way that I describe it to people is like, you can almost think about it as like a franchise, right? In some ways for sports. So I don't know if you like. I'm a basketball fan, so I always use NBA analogies. But if you think about the NBA, there's 30 teams. Each team has 15 players, roster spots, right? If you do the math, that's 450 to 500 players, and that's it. There's 500 players in the world that gets paid millions of dollars to play basketball, and then there's like a billion of people in the world that play basketball for free, right? And the reason why those people get paid a lot of money is because they're the best of the best of the best, and the reason why they are able to earn that is because the NBA constrains the amount of spots there are, right? So it's to incentivize the best to kind of the cream to rise to the top, and then the reason why those people should be handsomely rewarded is because they are delivering sports content at the highest level, right? Like no one wants to watch me play basketball, but everyone wants to watch LeBron play basketball because he can do some superhuman things. That's where the content becomes really interesting. And it makes sense that LeBron should be making like $100 million every single year through endorsements and salary because he is putting out the best product. So this is the premise of our model, and this is where NFTs come into play. NFTs act as that league pass or a franchise, right? It gives you access to become a pro level player, and ultimately within our economy, only the players using NFTs in the pro circuit are able to earn our native rewards in our token.
Okay. Do you have a native token? Do you have a
We
native
will
token
be we will
yet?
be launching one to coincide with the launch of the game on
Oh,
mainnet, and that's likely to be Q1 2024. The token, we're calling it
cool.
neurons as a play on like machine learning terminology. Neurons,
Neurons.
yeah. And yeah, so
Uh,
only the pro level NFTs are able to earn those rewards because they're exhibiting the most skill. They should be the most valuable kind of entities, if you will, within our esports system. So that's where kind of the overall construct of the economy is established and designed to be that way.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I want to thank you, Brandon. I want to thank you, Wei, for joining me today, and thanks, Rachel, for getting this together. But regardless, I think we've had an interesting one. Let's. I'm gonna continue to follow you guys. So if you guys make it, even make 15 million, 20 million dollars or something of that sort, I can write articles about you. That's how close I could get to $5 million. I feel it like slipping away. But regardless, your notes are very helpful, so I'm going to keep it handy. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And do follow them, guys. AI Arena, their parent company is called AI
Arena X Labs.
Labs,
Arena
AI
X Lab.
Arena
Yep.
X Labs. Go ahead and Google them, join their Discord, and avail of their NFTs on OpenSea.
Thank you. Thanks for having
I'll see
us.
you on the other
Thanks, Sarah.
side.